Hello and welcome. To mark World Mental Health Day, we have brought the brilliant Steve Goldsack to talk to us. Steve was diagnosed with complex emotional difficulties many years ago and now uses his own experience to help other people. So, hello, Steve, welcome.
Yeah.
So, Steve, some people might not know what complex emotional difficulties is. Can you tell us a bit more about what that means?
Yeah, sure. So around the United Kingdom, there are different versions of how we describe personality disorder, which is the psychiatric diagnosis. And complex emotional difficulties was decided by a group of service users and clinicians as a kinder, less stigmatizing way of describing what is personality disorder. So the diagnosis isn't any different, but the actual way we would describe it is deemed to be kinder by using terms like emotional difficulties or emotional needs instead of disorder, which is quite an unpopular word amongst people with the diagnosis.
Yeah. So, is it right that you were diagnosed when you were a young adult? And how has complex emotional difficulties affected your own life?
So no, like vast many people that I've worked with over the years and myself, misdiagnosis along the way. So my first ever mental health diagnosis was just depression. And they medicated me for that and it didn't do what it was supposed to do. Then it was bipolar because I was flipping, as most people with personality disorder do. We sort of rifle through our emotions in a day. And then a couple of other sort of guesses is the way I described them, which is probably unfair, but that's what they felt like at the time. So I wasn't actually given my the correct diagnosis until I was 40, which meant I'd done an awful lot of damage in my sort of life up until then without a name to it. I was called all sorts of things by people that, didn't want anything around schizo and things like that. It affected me most when I actually tried to be in a relationship like an adult, and the behaviors that I was exhibiting weren't adult behaviors, and that led to problems within myself in terms of guilt and things like that, and also for people around me. I didn't think it was fair at times, and I was always trying to push people away rather than be in that sort of situation. So until I was 40, I didn't really understand it. Fortunately, had treatment literally when I was 40 at the Brentford unit, and that opened up what I needed to understand around relationships, my responsibilities, the responsibilities of the condition, and what that's done to me. So in a way, it caused a massive mess. But over the last sort of 11 years, I've managed to sort of mediate that, use it to my advantage, use it to other people's advantage. And that was the real sort of the reason why I got involved in doing peer support and things like that.
Yeah. Oh. So, what advice would you give to somebody who is listening today and they might recognize themselves in what it is that you're describing?
It's a difficult one because in the past, having the diagnosis was the most important part of the puzzle, because without it, the specialist services did not entertain any sort of treatment for you. So you needed that diagnosis stroke label, as people will call it. So it's a very stigmatizing diagnosis, but you kind of have to sign up to it. Today, it's not as important. And when we speak a bit more about what's coming for people with a diagnosis, it will be even less important. But if you want to know what your diagnosis is, if you suspect, and it might not be a complex emotional difficulties, it could be something else, but you should always ask, get that opinion, and be insistent if you need to be, to find out what's wrong, because you have a right to know what they think is wrong with you, and therefore and support comes when you know what it is. There are great online support groups for almost any mental illness, but if you don't know which one you should be in, you're kind of in the dark, and that adds to isolation.
So, can you tell us a little bit more about your new job and how you are helping other people with complex emotional difficulties?
Yeah, sure. So there is a national program called the Community Mental Health Framework Transformation, going on. It's national, and there's money being pumped into, new money being pumped into mental health services to transform some of the services that are going on. There are three core elements to that. One is eating disorders, one is older adults, and the third one is personality disorder or complex emotional difficulties. And in order to ensure that that is done in a way that would be amenable to service users as much as it is to clinicians, they mandated that someone should be on the panel who is lived experience, who has an equal standing with his partners in giving not only voice to my views on it, but also receiving the voice of all the people in, well, for me, Kent and Medway, on what they think of these pathways and how they're going to improve, or if they trust what we're doing is actually going to be the right thing. So it feels really pressurized at times, because there's like a lot of people in Kent who need a better service. But other times when I'm sitting with service users and we're chatting about things, they like it that I'm here because they trust me as a service user. But it's a really exciting role that is already starting to sort of feel like we're doing something.
That sounds great. So if someone is listening and they have complex emotional difficulties and live in Medway or Kent, how can they get involved?
Get in touch. There'll be forums going on in all the areas that we'll be running. Some will be online. Hopefully, when the pandemic allows, we'll be doing some in person. Contact me directly. I'm willing to talk to people or share email. There will be an awful lot of stuff coming out that's pushing for people's opinions. And even if the opinion is, I liked what was already there, that's still a valid. It's unlikely to be that, but there are people out there that are happy with the service, and I would like to know that too. But just get in touch through whatever means necessary. If it's an email, a text, do what you can, because your voice is really important.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, Steve, to mark World Mental Health Day. 1 in 4 of us will be affected by mental illness at some point in our lives, and it's been brilliant to be able to throw the spotlight on complex emotional difficulties today. So if you'd like to share your own experience of mental health services, please do get in touch with us, and we'd love to hear from you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you very much. It's
No
been
problem,
great
my
talking
pleasure.
to you.
Bye, Sophie.
Thank